Hello again, and thanks very much for joining us. I'm Michael Nath. 6 days after the National Assembly passed the 2023 Appropriation Bill, which indicates an increase of 1.32 trillion naira from 20.51 trillion naira budget proposal of the President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the bill. Speaking at the signing of the 8th and final annual budget of this administration, the President said the aggregate expenditures of 21.83 trillion naira is an increase of 1.32 trillion naira over the initial executive proposal for a total expenditure of 20.51 trillion naira. President Muhammadu Buhari explained that the 22 Supplementary Appropriation Act would enable the administration to respond to the havoc caused by the recent nationwide floods in the infrastructure and agriculture sectors. He also said the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning will subsequently provide more details of the approved budget and the supporting 2022 Finance Act. The President said the amended fiscal framework for 2023, as approved by the National Assembly, shows additional revenues of 765.79 billion naira and an unfunded deficit of 553.46 billion naira. President Muhammadu Buhari said he has also noticed that the National Assembly introduced new projects into the 2023 budget proposal, for which it has appropriated 770.72 billion naira, and that the National Assembly also increased the provisions made by ministries, departments and agencies by 58.55 billion naira. Detailing his decision to sign the 2023 Appropriation Bill into law as passed by the National Assembly, President Buhari claimed it was to enable its implementation to commence without delay, considering the imminent transition process to another democratically elected government. He, however, directed the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning to engage with the legislature to revisit some of the changes made to the executive budget proposal, expressing the hope that the National Assembly will cooperate with the executive arm of government in this regard. He urged the National Assembly to reconsider its position on his proposal to scrutinize the federal government's outstanding ways and means of balance at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, guests on iBrandTV Business Breakfast has called on investors to take advantage of the passage of the 2023 budget signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari to make gains, especially in the first quarter of the year 2023. Speaking on Business Breakfast on Tuesday, Oladipo Ajayi said the budget is on high side and is a big task for the government.
When the government is aggressively borrowing the market, rates will go up, and the impact of that people that invest will get a better return. But on the flip side of it is that people that have to borrow from the bank will likely have to pay out of pocket, because it simply means that we will likely see rates actually going up for people that actually want to borrow. What that will mean is that the cost of borrowing will have to go up. So as a result of that, companies will have the smart companies need to actually take advantage of the Q1 when the economy is just kick-starting for the year, and they quickly lock in whatever fundraising they need to do, whether they want to do a bond issuance or they want to do a commercial paper issuance. This is the best time for them to actually come to the market and to do what they want, what they need to do before rates start going aggressively upside. So, and for investors as well, it's a very good year for investors, because looking at government raising close to 10 trillion on the market, it means that rates and yield will go up for any investors. So it's an opportunity for investors to actually restructure their portfolio by moving to a more compensating investment.
President Muhammadu Buhari said on Tuesday, after signing the 2023 budget into law, that Nigeria will be paying 1.8 trillion naira extra interest in 2023 if Parliament rejects a loan-to-bond swap request on the central bank's overdrafts to the government. The Senate last week delayed a decision on the president's request to convert $53 billion worth of central bank overdrafts to the government into 40-year bonds after some lawmakers questioned the plan. In a speech on Tuesday, Buhari said the government currently pays a 3% margin above the central bank's lending rate of 16.5%, but his administration has negotiated a rate of 9% for the bonds. Lawmakers increased the size of the 2023 budget by 6.4% to 21.8 trillion naira after they raised the oil price assumption to $75 a barrel from $70. The president said, considering the imminent transition process, he decided to sign the 2023 Appropriation Bill into law to enable its implementation to commence without delay, referring to a general election coming up in February. The International Monetary Fund has urged Nigeria to phase out central bank financing of the government to help reduce double-digit inflation. Economists say Nigeria's government is spending more money on debt repayments than on education and health, but Buhari has said his government had no choice but to borrow its way out of 2 recessions in the past 7 years. The federal government has allocated 6.6 trillion naira to debt service in the 2023 budget signed by President Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday at the presidential villa in Abuja. Reports Nigeria had reported that 2023 appropriation bill was increased by 1.32 trillion naira to 21.83 trillion naira from the 20.51 trillion naira proposed by President Muhammadu Buhari. Details of the signed budget revealed that debt servicing was also increased to 6.6 trillion naira from 6.31 trillion naira as the World Bank complained of its impact on Nigeria's revenue. In a report in December, the World Bank said Nigeria and other developing economies have an external debt of $9 trillion in 2021. The report showed that Nigeria's external debt was $18.8 billion in 2010, but rose to $76.2 billion last year. The World Bank said about 60% of the poorest countries are already at high risk of debt distress, already in distress. It added that at the end of the 2021, IDA-eligible countries' debt service payments on long-term public and publicly guaranteed external debt totaled $46.2 billion, equivalent to 10.3% of their exports of goods and services and 1.8% of their gross national income, according to the report. Also on Tuesday, Ripples Nigeria reported the World Bank said about 62% of the federal government's revenue will be gulfed by debt owed to the Central Bank of Nigeria in 2027. In 2021, the government had borrowed about 6.3 trillion naira within 10 months from the central bank, raising the CBN loan to federal government from 17.5 trillion naira in December 2021 to 23.7 trillion naira in October 2022. Now, the available generation capacity in Nigeria's power sector dropped again in 2022 as it crashed from the 6,336.52 megawatts recorded in 2021 to 5,346.82 megawatts last year. A report says it was also observed that the annual capacity payment loss to power generation companies had increased to 1.8 trillion naira as data from the document further showed a decrease in the average utilized power in 2022. Figures obtained from power generation companies indicated that while the average quantum of electricity utilized in 2021 was 4,118.98 megawatts, it dropped to 3,940.54 megawatts in 2022. The document on power generation trend from 2013 to 2022 showed that Nigeria's average available generation capacity fluctuated between 4,000 megawatts and 7,700 megawatts since the sector was privatized in 2013. Also, the average utilized generation hovered between 3,000 megawatts and 4,000 megawatts during the 9-year review period, while unutilized generation revolved around 1,000 megawatts and 3,700 megawatts. Figures from the document show that Nigeria's average available power generation capacity in 2013, 2014, 2015 and 2016 were 4,214.32 megawatts, 6,154.05 megawatts, 6,616.28 megawatts, and 7,039.96 megawatts respectively. In 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, the average generation capacity figures were 6,871.26 megawatts, 7,506.23 megawatts, 7,381.67 megawatts, and 7,792.51 megawatts respectively. Since 2018, the figures kept dropping, as those of 2021 and 2022 were 6,336.52 megawatts and 5,346.82 megawatts respectively. For average utilized generation, the GENCO's report stated that in 2013, 2014, 2015 and 2016, the quantum of electricity utilized was 3,183.51 megawatts, 3,419.1 megawatts, 3,606.05 megawatts, and 3,212.02 megawatts respectively. The average utilized power in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 were put at 3,599.33 megawatts, 3,807.22 megawatts, 3,782 megawatts, and 4,050.07 megawatts respectively. Now, for 2021 and 2022, the average quantum of utilized electricity were 4,118.98 megawatts and 3,940.54 megawatts respectively. That's according to figures from the power generation companies. The GENCOs also stated in the document that the total capacity payment loss to power producers from 2015 to 2022 had increased to 1.8 trillion naira. The report showed that in 2015, 2016, 2017 and 2018, the annual capacity payment loss was 214.93 billion naira, 273.32 billion naira, 236.47 billion naira, and 264.08 billion naira, respectively. For 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022, the figures for annual capacity payment loss were put at 256.97 billion naira, 266.1 billion naira, to 159.86 billion naira and 132.19 billion naira, respectively. Commenting on the development, the Executive Secretary Association Power Generation Companies, Joy Ogaji, said the sector was only recording about 100 megawatts growth in power generation yearly. She wondered if the vision of generating power about 30,000 megawatts in Nigeria by 2030 was feasible, stressing that with the trend in power generation over the years, one could project the future of electricity production in Nigeria.